All right, so I want to talk about something that I talked a little bit about yesterday, and it's the idea that people on the left tend to not get or not be exposed themselves to, whether intentional or unintentional, views that disagree or oppose their own. And first of all, I don't think that a lot of it is people consciously saying, I'm not going to get any right wing news or that kind of stuff. I'd say probably most of it is subconscious, and it's for the main reason that public schools are biased to the left, so they people from an early age are taught that the other big thing too to talk about that people tend to think that a moderate view, especially people on the left tend to think that I guess a lot of people on the left that a moderate view is actually not as far to the left as they actually think. And for example, if you talk to any progressive or not any, but most for like I mean I've talked to there's this not popular but social media page from the province I'm from, and almost everyone that comments on the page, which the comments are censored, so it's a pretty select few people, but there's about 10 to 20 people, and the majority of them in the latest election agreed that the reason that the left wing political party that lost because they weren't far enough to the left. And for context, the province I'm from is the most right leaning province in Canada, more than likely. And so this is the bubble that these people are in, that they think that the reason they lost is because they weren't far enough to the left, even though anybody with half a brain knows that it's because they were too far to the left, and they may not even have won, even if they were a centrist party. And I was talking to some of them, not in the comments because they're censored, but and that's another reason why the left is less likely to get political views opposed to their own too, is that the comments are censored, and that they all said, every one of them, at least the ones that directly addressed my question, that no, that the Liberal Party in Canada and the NDP party running was no, they're centrist, and they didn't even say center left. They didn't even say center left. They think that the Liberals in Canada and the NDP in the province I'm from are centrist parties. Like they literally think that when you could make an argument they're not far left, but they're definitely to the left of where a traditional left wing party from Canada or the US was from, let's say, 20 years ago. And then for the main reason that they have gone way to the left on a lot of issues. Like, left wing parties socially are probably comparable to where the typical conservative party is nowadays. Um, Left wing parties fiscally tend to be comparable to where a conservative party is nowadays. Like the conservatives in Canada, like I keep saying, but people need to know this because a lot of people still don't, is that the Conservative Party of Canada could run as could have taken their platform, given it to the Liberal Party of Canada 20 years ago, and not one Liberal would have questioned it. Not one. Maybe the super far left, but they weren't few and far between back then. So um, the other big reason is that number one, like I said, people are exposed overwhelmingly to left wing sources growing up, so they think that that's normal when in reality it isn't. Um, College, again, completely biased to the left. Society, a lot of jobs, public schools, like I said, they're funded by taxation. Taxation is a left wing concept. Therefore, public school teachers are going to be a heck of a lot less likely to expose kids to viewpoints that would conflict with their source of income. Like, it's such a basic concept, it's easy to understand, that anybody who doesn't understand it, in my mind, is either an idiot or just completely biased. The other reason is that for the left not wanting to see opposing political views is that if they see an opposing political views, like the left has this idea, and like in this Jonathan Haidt study, they found that conservatives overwhelmingly could predict liberal belief systems and why they think the way they do, and the other way around is that liberals couldn't. And the further to the left you went, the less likely you were to be able to predict why a conservative believes what they believe and why they believe it. And the reason for that is that liberals have this idea that people on the right they want less immigration because they're Nazis or they're white supremacists. They don't want free healthcare because they want poor people to die and they hate poor people. They want their guns because they want to be able to kill black people, and they're just paranoid because they think the world's going to end, even though the left thinks the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. When in reality, it's fine to disagree. The left seems to think that they'll actively oppose this too when someone on the left has this idea that the only reason you're differ on their belief system is because you're racist, and you point out the real reason. They will even fight and try and debate you on the reasoning for your belief. Like, that's just how far out to lunch that a lot of them are. They don't seem to comprehend that you can still disagree with them, but not think that the reason why is because they're a Nazi. And it's really, really crazy, and it's something that needs to be talked about a lot more because we're not talking about it enough. And that, what was I getting at? The far left, like I said, the main reason, like, for example, I was talking about how the left doesn't understand why the right believes what they believe. If you want to have a debate with someone, I mean, if someone's completely disagreeing with you on something, then it's almost impossible to have a good debate with them. But if you want to talk with people about politics and stuff like that, you have to understand what they believe and why they believe it. For example, I try and talk with people sometimes about anarchism and life without a government, and it's in one ear and out the other because people first of all, they don't even come close to having a coherent definition of what anarchism is. They think that it's just no rules and anything goes, when in reality that's not even close to what it is. But they've heard that so many times that you try and tell them different, and it's, like I said, it's in one ear and out the other. So if you want to have a coherent conversation with someone on that, you have to understand. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. People seem to think that on the left, this is overwhelmingly, people on the left do this, and people on the right maybe a little bit too. They think that if you completely understand the other side's argument and you do research into understanding why they think what they think, that it somehow means that you agree with it, when in reality it doesn't. It just makes you better at debating them, or debating with them, and it makes you understand, it gives you some sympathy for people too, which is another reason why I think the left doesn't do this kind of stuff, because they have this idea in their head that, they're Nazis, and why would I possibly want sympathy for the Nazis? When in reality, I mean, we all know that, anyone with a brain knows that they're not Nazis. They just, like I said, people on the left, because of the RK selection theory, they think that resources are unlimited. It's an endless supply. So if you're on the right and you don't want free healthcare, it must mean that, you hate poor people. When in reality, the reason is that resources are finite. We don't have the money to give away free healthcare to everyone. And again, the studies will back this up. Again, the province I'm from, healthcare in Canada is a province-to-province thing. It's not a federal thing. And the provinces pay for healthcare, basically. So the cost of healthcare for the province I'm from is almost the exact same as the amount generated in taxes in the province I'm from. So basically, in other words, every dollar that's spent by the government in the province I'm from is basically either deficit financing, aside from healthcare spending, it's either deficit financing or it comes from oil revenue or other royalty revenue, basically, which is absolutely insane to think of. I know there's also been states that have thought about the whole free healthcare or Medicare for all idea, and every one of them has came back and found no, it would be too expensive. We would either have to run massive deficits or we'd have to drastically increase taxes. And even doing that wouldn't do it, because people on the left have this idea that if we just massively raise taxes on the rich, that it would somehow pay for all their socialist utopia fantasies. And in reality, number one, it wouldn't. If you tax the quote unquote 1%, if you doubled taxes on them, it still wouldn't even pay for a lot of the ideas that Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez and all these kind of people want. And the other thing too is that you can't just double taxes on the top tax bracket or the 1%. It's not feasible, because if you just did that, then the people, like if let's say you doubled taxes on people making over $1 million, anybody making between $1 and $2 million, which is probably the majority of people making over $1 million, would just make just less than $1 million. They'd make like $950 or between $900 and $999. So they wouldn't have to pay the much higher tax bracket. They'd still have the same amount of money in their pocket. Not only that, they could probably take an extra, month or two off during the year. So it's a win-win-win. And not only that, the government revenue goes down. And studies will show this too, that as you increase the tax rate, tax revenue stays relatively neutral. And it's for the basic idea that, again, if you're a doctor and your taxes are raised on you, well, what do you do? What are you going to do? Like, let's say the tax rate for over 250,000 is raised, and you're making 300 or 270 or something like that. Well, you'll just take an extra 2 or 3 weeks off throughout the year, and you're making just under 250. You have more money in your pocket. You have more time off, so you win in every way, and the government loses in every way. So, I guess back to the idea that I was talking about is that. My suggestion for people is, if you're on the left, you really need to go seek out right-wing sources, because they're not going to do it on your own. Social media is completely biased to the left. The mainstream media is completely biased to the left. And just because you watch Fox News doesn't mean you're getting a good, coherent right-wing news source. The only way to do it nowadays is independent media. And even on the left, my suggestion for people on the right is, I think moderates are the best in between, because if you're a right wing or a left wing partisan, it doesn't really matter what anyone is going to tell you who opposes with you. My suggestion is that go watch a moderate channel. Like Tim Pool's a good example. I know he has some stuff that I think is pretty crazy, but overwhelming, I think he's pretty about as neutral as it gets. Like, he's a true centrist. I would say maybe slightly to the left of center, and he even says it himself, so I don't think that's a biased view. So if you want to give an unbiased view of things, I hear this all the time. People say, well, you got to get a mix of conservative and liberal or left-wing news. And in reality, that's a completely horrible, wrong way of thinking about it, because like I said, the news is overwhelmingly biased to the left. Social media platforms overwhelmingly prop up left-wing sources. So if you want to get an unbiased view of things, you need to, I would say about 80-20, maybe 75-25, majority conservative and or moderate. And when I say moderate, I mean true moderate, because like I say, these people that I see on this this Instagram page, they're literally borderline communists. I mean, they support the Green New Deal. They, like I said, they think that the NDP are not far enough to the left, when in reality I would say literally less than 1% of the population would hold this view, and yet they think that it's a moderate. Like, they think that 50% of people agree with them, when literally maybe 5% of people at most agree with them. So when you hear someone say, oh, I'm a moderate, or I'm center left, or center right, or centrist, you really need to audit that, because a lot of people aren't that say that, and I would say a majority of people aren't. So, and the best way to tell if someone's a moderate will be, what is their view on Trump? Like I say literally, because the best way to tell if someone's a moderate, their view on Trump will be something along the lines of, the left's view on Trump is way out there, that they're way, way too hard on him. Like, they almost have an obsession. In fact, I think a lot of them do. they won't support Trump. I mean, they'll support some of the things he does. They won't support him, but their view of the left's view of Trump will be that the left is crazy. That that's the best way to tell, is that they won't be a Trump supporter. I mean, they'll support some of the things he does, but on the other side, their view of the left wing's view of Trump is that they're crazy. So that's exactly what Tim Pool's is. Like I said, I think Tim Pool's a little bit biased, but I think he does a pretty good job, at least for a moderate, and he's someone that I like to listen to just because the majority of people I listen to are definitely right-leaning. The majority of people I listen to definitely are not pro-Trump, um, even though I'm someone who's a right-leaning person. So, like I say, I guarantee you that if you polled, a lot of people are probably going to dispute this claim that I'm making, but I would bet a lot of money that if you polled left-wing people that are to the left, and especially, let's say, not just center left, like let's say like we're pretty far left, maybe not far left like Ocasio-Cortez, but they're, they agree with a lot of the socialist ideas, but they're maybe not full on socialists. I would bet any amount of money, pretty much every position I have, that they would be less likely to be following and listening to right-wing news sources than people who are on the other way around. And I would say, again, part of it might be by default, that if you're on the right and you're out at a friend's, or you're out in public, you know, CNN or CBC is going to be the news outlet that's on TV. Again, social media bias to the left. So part of that might be default, but part of it's definitely true. So I've talked quite a bit about this issue. I don't want to talk too much more, but like I said, if you're on the left, chances are you're not getting an unbiased view of the right, and that's, again, these studies just prove that, because if you're on the left and you are getting an unbiased view of the right, well then you would be able to predict right wing views, and this study completely disproves that. And if you're on the right and you weren't getting an unbiased view of the left, then you wouldn't be able to predict why the left believes what they believe. And most conservatives can. They're much more likely than liberals to say that and believe that. So I'll leave it there. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.